The December cold settled over the mountains like a heavy blanket, and Marcus Thompson felt it in his bones. Not just the weather, the loneliness. His apartment had become too quiet, too still, filled only with the sound of wind pressing against the windows and the memories he tried to keep at bay. It was late when he returned from the office that Thursday evening. He dropped his coat on the chair, pulled out his phone more from habit than intention, and then his heart stopped. A message glowed on the screen. From Sophia Reed, the woman who had always been his safe harbor, even when the storms of life pulled them in separate directions. The message was straightforward, but it carried an emotional weight that took his breath away. "Are you alone for the holidays? If so, I'd love for you to join us at the mountain house." Marcus stared at those words. Read them twice, then a third time. It had been nearly a year since they'd seen each other face to face. Their communication had dwindled to occasional texts, brief updates about new jobs, new cities, the demanding pace of adult life. Yet she remained the person his thoughts drifted to in the quiet hours before sleep. The mountain house she mentioned held significance. He'd visited once, years before, when they were younger, and believed the future would unfold exactly as they hoped. But life rarely follows our careful plans. Somewhere along the way, their feelings transformed into silence. Not because they stopped caring, but because they cared so deeply they couldn't find the words. Marcus reread the invitation slowly this time, letting each word settle. He'd spent the last 3 holiday seasons alone, convincing himself it didn't matter, that he was too exhausted to care. But the truth was simpler and more painful. He missed connection. He missed warmth, and in ways he refused to admit aloud, he missed her. His thumb hovered over the keyboard. The nervousness felt absurd for someone his age. But this wasn't just any invitation, not from her. He typed several responses, deleting each one. Too enthusiastic, too casual, too guarded. Finally, he wrote, "I'd really appreciate that, thank you." When he pressed send, warmth bloomed in his chest, subtle but unmistakable, like someone had opened a window in a room that had been closed for far too long. That night, concentration eluded him completely. The television played unwatched. His dinner sat half-eaten. Instead, his mind filled with images of Sophia. The gentle way she laughed when trying to hide her nervousness. How her eyes softened when she truly listened. The way she made ordinary moments feel luminous without effort. He wondered about her motivation, perhaps nostalgia for simpler times, perhaps kindness, or perhaps, and this thought made his pulse quicken, she missed him too. The next morning, Marcus packed carefully. Warm sweaters, gloves, the blue scarf Sophia once mentioned looked good on him. She probably didn't remember that comment, but he remembered everything she'd ever said. As he zipped the bag, reality crystallized. After all the distance, all the unspoken words, he was going to see her again. The drive took 3 hours through snow-covered roads lined with evergreens. Old songs played softly, melodies from late nights when he'd almost called her but never did. His thoughts raced ahead, imagining their reunion. Would it feel familiar? Would it feel like nothing had changed? Or like everything had? When the mountain house finally appeared through the falling snow, his breath caught. Warm light glowed from every window, the building nestled into the landscape like a promise of shelter. It looked exactly as he remembered. Inviting, peaceful, full of warmth he hadn't experienced in years. Before he could steady himself, the front door opened. Sophia stepped onto the porch, bundled in a winter coat, snowflakes catching in her dark hair like tiny stars. When their eyes met, the world seemed to pause. "Marcus," she said, her voice carrying that familiar warmth that could melt the coldest day. "I'm so glad you're here." His smile wasn't the practiced one he used with colleagues. This was genuine, quiet, carrying emotions he wasn't ready to name. "Me too." In that instant, something shifted between them. Not dramatically or loudly, but in a way that mattered deeply. It felt like the beginning of something they'd both avoided for too long. As he stepped inside, leaving the cold behind, Marcus knew with certainty this holiday would be different from all the others. Not with Sophia standing before him. Not when everything inside him was coming back to life. The mountain house felt warmer than Marcus remembered. The walls seemed to hold decades of joy and shared moments. A fire crackled in the stone fireplace, and the scent of spiced cider drifted through the rooms. Sophia led him down a hallway lined with family photographs. "I saved you the best room before my siblings claimed it," she said with a lightness that made him smile. He laughed under his breath, surprised by how naturally they fell back into their old rhythm. Everything inside him settled into a feeling he hadn't experienced in years, the sense of belonging. After unpacking, he returned to find Sophia preparing hot drinks. She handed him a steaming mug and curled up on the sofa, tucking her legs beneath a knitted blanket. Marcus sat across from her, close enough that their knees nearly touched, the fire warming the space between them. "It's been too long," she said softly. "Yeah. Life got complicated. That's not the whole story, though." Her voice remained gentle but honest. He looked up. Her eyes held something complex, sadness mixed with hope, vulnerability carefully guarded. He tried to lighten the moment. "You always could see right through me." She smiled, but it didn't entirely mask the emotion in her expression. "Only because I know you better than most people do." The truth of those words settled between them, heavy and warm. They talked for hours, catching up on everything. Her work at the community center, his demanding schedule, her ended engagement, his attempt to move forward after someone who never loved him the way he needed. They shared these details, easily, but beneath the surface updates, something deeper was happening. Every smile lingered. Every glance held meaning. Later, when Sophia's family arrived, and the house filled with laughter and noise, Marcus still found himself watching her, not desperately or obviously, just in a quiet, wondering way, the way you watch something precious you didn't realize you'd been missing until it was right in front of you again. After dinner, as Sophia's parents retired early and her siblings played games in the next room, she stayed in the kitchen washing dishes. Marcus joined her without being asked. It felt completely natural. "You haven't changed," she said with a soft laugh, as he grabbed a towel. "You have," he replied before thinking. She froze momentarily. The words hung in the air, too honest, too revealing. "How?" she asked quietly. He hesitated. "You seem calmer, stronger, or maybe I'm just seeing things I didn't notice before." Sophia looked down at the dish in her hands, hiding a smile that conveyed more than just amusement. It was gratitude, relief. "This year taught me to stop pretending everything was fine when it wasn't." "Good," he whispered. "You deserve peace." Their eyes met. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then her brother called from the living room, shattering the moment. Sophia exhaled softly and returned to the dishes. But the tension, warm and growing, didn't fade. Later, when the house finally quieted and everyone disappeared into their rooms, Sophia returned to the living room. She sat by the fire, hugging a cushion to her chest. Marcus remained across from her, uncertain whether to leave or stay. "You don't have to sit way over there," she said suddenly, patting the space beside her. "I don't bite." He laughed and moved closer. The firelight made her features softer, almost delicate. He could see every emotion she tried to conceal. For several minutes, they said nothing. The silence wasn't awkward. It was full, warm, almost intimate. Then Sophia gazed into the flames and asked, "Do you ever think about people you lost along the way?" His heart tightened. She didn't look at him, but he knew she wasn't talking about casual acquaintances or distant friends. She was talking about them. "Every day," he said quietly. Her breath caught. She finally turned her head and looked at him. Really looked at him, like she was searching for something she wasn't sure she had permission to want. Before either could speak again, a sudden gust of wind rattled the window. The moment shattered like thin glass. Sophia looked away quickly, pretending to adjust her blanket. Marcus leaned back, trying to calm the storm inside him. They didn't speak for the rest of the night. They didn't need to. But something fundamental had changed. Subtle, deep, impossible to ignore. As the fire slowly dimmed, Marcus realized he wasn't just visiting for the holidays. He was standing at the edge of something he hadn't expected to feel again. The next evening arrived with surprising speed. Christmas Eve brought bitter wind that howled through the pines, but inside the house, everything felt cozy and charged with quiet anticipation. Sophia's family decided to drive into town for dinner and last-minute shopping. Sophia stayed behind, saying she needed to finish decorating the tree. Marcus offered to help, though both of them understood that wasn't the real reason. The truth was simple, neither wanted to be apart. As soon as the car disappeared down the mountain road, the house transformed, quieter, brighter, as if it belonged only to them. Sophia put on soft holiday music, old melodies with gentle rhythms, and Marcus felt something shift inside him, not dramatically but genuinely, like the beginning of a truth he'd avoided for years. They moved around the living room together, hanging ornaments, adjusting lights, positioning the star at the top of the tree. Sophia laughed more than usual, and Marcus found himself laughing too, even at small things. Their hands kept brushing whenever they reached for the same decoration. Each time it happened, Sophia's breath caught slightly. She didn't pull away, neither did he. At one point, she stepped onto a small stool to hang an ornament high on the tree. Marcus moved behind her instinctively, ready to catch her if she lost balance. A simple, natural gesture. When she turned to look down at him, their faces suddenly close, her smile softened. "You always do that," she said quietly. "Do what? Protect people without making it obvious." He swallowed, unsure how to respond. She stepped down slowly, brushing past him. Her arm grazed his, and the small contact lingered longer than it should have. They continued decorating, but the air grew warmer, heavier with unspoken feelings. Music played softly, lights glowed, and outside the windows, snow fell in peaceful silence. Inside, Marcus felt something he'd buried for years rising back to life. After finishing with the tree, Sophia sank onto the sofa, looking thoughtful and a little overwhelmed. Marcus sat beside her, leaving just enough space to be respectful, but close enough to feel her warmth. "I didn't expect this Christmas to feel like this," she said softly. "Like what?" She hesitated, twisting a strand of hair nervously. "Like something fundamental is shifting." Marcus felt his heart kick. "Yeah. I feel it too." Sophia looked at him then, truly looked at him. Not the casual glances of friends catching up, but the kind of look that comes from deep inside, from years of unspoken feelings. "You know," she whispered, "I always imagined spending the holidays with someone who truly understood me. Someone who didn't make me feel like I had to be perfect." His throat tightened. "Maybe you already have that person." Her breath caught. She didn't move, didn't blink. The closeness between them intensified, like the world had paused just for them. It felt like if either leaned slightly closer, everything would change forever. The moment pulled them toward each other, slow and natural. Sophia's fingers curled slightly, as if wanting to reach for him but unsure if she should. Marcus's heartbeat thundered in his ears. Then, just as she opened her mouth to say something she'd kept inside for years, her phone rang. The sharp sound cut through the moment like a blade. Sophia jumped and grabbed the phone quickly, glancing at the screen. Her expression changed instantly, not fear or joy but something complicated that tightened her features. "It's my ex," she whispered. Marcus felt the warmth drain from his chest, replaced by a quiet ache. He forced himself to breathe. "You can answer it." Sophia hesitated, staring at the name on the screen. She seemed torn between something old and something new. She finally stepped away and answered in a calm, distant tone. The call lasted less than a minute. When she returned, her hands trembled slightly. She sat beside him again, leaving more distance this time. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice thin but steady. He wasn't sure if she was apologizing for the call or for the moment they'd lost. "It's okay," he replied quietly, but the atmosphere had changed. The warmth remained, but now carried something else. Fear, hesitation, or perhaps just the weight of old wounds surfacing at the wrong time. Sophia wrapped herself in the blanket and stared at the tree lights. Marcus watched her in silence, trying to understand the conflict within her. She wasn't confused about her feelings, he could tell that much. She was scared of what they meant. They didn't speak much after that. The music continued, the fire burned, and snow kept falling outside. But inside the house, both felt the same truth. Something had almost happened. Something real. Something they weren't quite ready to face. Not yet. But the night had changed everything, whether they acknowledged it or not. Christmas morning arrived with gentle brightness spreading across the snowy landscape. Sunlight poured through the windows like liquid gold, touching every surface. Marcus woke earlier than usual, the memory of the previous night still vivid, the almost moment, the sudden interruption, the way Sophia had looked afterward, confused, scared, holding something heavy. He dressed quietly, stepped onto the wooden porch with coffee, and let the cold air clear his thoughts. The forest was silent except for the soft sound of snow shifting in the morning light. Marcus wrapped his hands around the warm mug and tried to understand what it all meant. He had no regrets, but he also had no certainty about where things stood now. Sophia's past had collided with their present at the worst possible moment, and he didn't know if she was ready to let go. Of old memories, old heartbreaks, old fears. He cared too much to push her, but waiting carried its own kind of pain. Eventually, the door creaked open. Sophia stepped outside wrapped in a blanket, her hair tousled from sleep, her expression tender but thoughtful. She looked like someone carrying the weight of an unmade decision. She didn't speak at first. She simply walked over and sat beside him, the blanket brushing his arm. "Morning," she said softly. "Morning." For several seconds, they watched the trees together, their breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. The silence wasn't sharp or uncomfortable, just full of something waiting to be spoken. "I didn't sleep much," she admitted quietly. "Neither did I." She sighed, pulling the blanket tighter. "I didn't answer that call last night because I wanted to avoid the moment. I answered because I didn't know what to do with all the feelings that suddenly surfaced." "They didn't just surface," Marcus said gently. "They've been there for a long time. You just didn't let yourself acknowledge them." Sophia closed her eyes as if his words struck something deep. "You're right, and that terrifies me." Marcus didn't move closer, didn't take her hand, didn't push. He just listened. "That phone call," she continued, "wasn't what you might think. I wasn't hoping for anything. Wasn't considering reconciliation or reopening old wounds. He called to apologize for things I'd already made peace with. Marcus listened carefully, his heart steady but cautious. I answered, Sophia said, not because he still matters, but because I needed to close that final chapter. I needed to hear myself say it was over. Marcus breathed slowly. And is it? She turned to him then, fully, honestly, ready to face everything she'd been running from. Yes, completely. A gentle breeze lifted a few strands of her hair. She didn't look away. She held his gaze with raw honesty. Marcus, she whispered. Last night scared me because I wasn't prepared to feel so intensely again, especially with someone who means everything. You've always been important to me, more than I ever admitted. His voice dropped. I never stopped caring about you, not once. Her eyes softened. For the first time since his arrival, she reached out and took his hand, not quickly or nervously, but gently, like touching something fragile and precious. Their fingers fit together naturally, as if they'd been waiting for this moment for years. I feel safe with you, she said. I feel understood. I feel seen, and I think... She paused, choosing her words carefully. My heart has been slowly finding its way back to you without me even realizing it. Marcus's throat tightened, not with sadness, but with hope. Then let it. Sophia leaned her head lightly against his shoulder. The blanket fell over both of them. The world around them was peaceful, untouched, perfect. The snow glistened like countless diamonds on the ground, and the morning sun wrapped them in gentle warmth. They didn't kiss. They didn't rush into anything dramatic. They just sat there, holding hands, sharing warmth, letting the moment speak for them. For them, this was enough. More than enough. It wasn't just a Christmas morning. It was a beginning. Soft, slow, honest. A beginning they both needed more than they'd realized. As the light grew brighter over the mountains, Marcus knew one thing with absolute certainty. This Christmas wasn't just memorable because they spent it together. It was unforgettable because it gave them back something they thought they'd lost. The courage to love again, and the wisdom to do it differently this time.